Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Stephanie Cox. New sanctions on Russia as the G7 summit is about to begin. Find out what the sanctions would do as the U.S. is responding to Russian warships in Cuba. Hamas is demanding changes to a possible ceasefire deal. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Qatar working on the deal, saying the demands are not acceptable. In a historic vote, the Southern Baptists have narrowly voted down a ban on churches headed by women pastors. What does this mean for one of the country's largest religious organizations? A bill to end forced broker fees for renters. Supporters and protesters alike rallied outside New York City's City Hall today ahead of a public hearing. We'll give you both sides of the debate. The European Union is upping tariffs imposed on Chinese electric vehicles. How the bloc is coming more in line with the U.S. approach. President Biden is heading to Italy today for the G7 summit that begins Thursday. The meeting is scheduled to cover major challenges, including China and Russia. It comes as the U.S. announces new sanctions against Russia and those helping communist China. Here's more.
The U.S. Department of the Treasury announced the sanctions today, taking aim at foreign financial institutions supporting Russia's war. The new sanctions restrict Russia's access to certain U.S. software and information technology services. They target over 300 individuals and entities that help Russia sustain its war effort and evade sanctions. The measure specifically targets China. The Chinese communist regime has managed to fill a significant portion of Russia's industrial base since that war began. Other entities on the list include some countries in the United Arab Emirates and Turkey. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen highlighted that Russia is relying on critical supplies from third world countries, accessing foreign technology and using foreign financial institutions. She said, quote, "We are increasing the risk for financial institutions dealing with Russia's war economy and eliminating paths for evasion." Meanwhile, a fleet of Russia warships arrived in Cuba on Wednesday for military exercises. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan commented on the latest development.
It's something we watch closely and carefully. It's something that we went out publicly on several days before it happened, so the world would understand the context and the world would also know that we are watching. And so we will see how this unfolds in the coming days. But we have seen this kind of thing before, and we expect to see this kind of thing again, and I'm not going to read into any particular motives.
The Russian fleet includes a nuclear-powered submarine. They are expected to stay in the Caribbean through summer and may also stop in Venezuela. Sullivan said the U.S. has not seen any signs that Russia is using the warships to transfer any missiles to Cuba.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Qatar today. He's trying to close a ceasefire deal for Gaza, but he says Hamas proposed some changes to the deal which are not acceptable.
Look, as I said, based on what we saw last night, the response from Hamas, numerous changes proposed to the deal that was on the table and that the entire world has gotten behind, but some of those are workable changes. Some, as I said, are not.
Blinken did not exactly lay out what changes Hamas is seeking, but he said the U.S. will keep trying to close the deal. He put the blame on Hamas, accusing it of changing its demands. Blinken's comments come as Hezbollah fired a massive barrage of rockets into northern Israel. They're avenging the killing of a top commander. This further escalated regional tensions. Hezbollah is a terrorist group backed by Iran and an ally of Hamas. They have traded fire with Israel nearly every day since the 8-month-long Israel-Hamas war began. The group said it will only stop if there is a truce in Gaza. This has raised fears of an even more devastating regional conflagration. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
It's a busy day on Capitol Hill, with the House and the Senate teeing up votes for bills that are considered messaging bills. Congress is also examining the expanding influence of China, Russia, and Iran in the Americas. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez joins us live from the Capitol. Luis, what can you tell us about today's legislative agenda?
Of course, Steph, yes, indeed, a very busy week, a busy day in Capitol Hill. This Wednesday, the House Foreign Affairs Committee held a hearing to examine the great power competition happening here in the Western Hemisphere. Lawmakers got to depose officials from the State Department and from USAID. And Chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Congressman Michael McCaul, highlighted in his opening remarks that it's Russia, China, and Iran, the actors that are expanding their malign activities here in the Americas. Let's listen to Congressman McCaul.
China, Russia, and Iran have bolstered their presence in the region. As we speak, 4 Russian warships, including a nuclear-powered submarine and a frigate carrying hypersonic missiles, are set to arrive in Cuba. China is bankrolling the dictatorship in Nicaragua, and Iran is looking to station Quds forces in Venezuela.
During a recess for votes, I got to speak with Congressman Gregory Meeks, who's the ranking member, Democratic ranking member in the House Foreign Affairs Committee. And he agrees with his Republican counterparts that it's China, Russia, and Iran, the ones posing the major national security threats to the United States, but disagreed with House Republicans' viewpoint that this should be examined through the lens of great power competition. Let's listen to what Democratic ranking member Congressman Gregory Meeks had to say about this.
To say that it's the great power competition, meaning that we're only going to look to do to stop or to block China. So the interest is not our friends and our allies in the continent. It's only about China. So yes, we want to compete with China, but the reason what we want to do is to make sure that we're doing the right thing in our hemisphere and for the countries in our hemisphere.
So we had Republicans suggest, for example, giving military support to block the Darien Gap in between Colombia and Panama as a way to stem the flow of migrants north towards the United States. And then we had Democrats like Congressman Jonathan Jackson actually suggesting having the U.S. should have closer ties with the governments of the likes of Cuba and Venezuela. Let's listen to Congressman Jonathan Jackson.
It is no longer acceptable that we have the poorest nation in the world off of our shores. When President Trump was leaving out and he put terrorism status on Cuba, that in turn made their economy falter. So our migration, if you will, crisis in 6 urban cities has come from foreign policy as it goes into Venezuela. We need to reverse some of these. We need to normalize relationships, strengthen our own hemisphere.
So both Congressman Michael McCaul and Congressman Gregory Meeks, the chairman and ranking member of the committee, agreed that the Foreign Affairs Committee in the House of Representatives might be one of the last bipartisan committees in the House. But clearly, as from what we just heard, there are some very different policy suggestions for a common threat analysis from both Republicans and Democrats, Steph.
Yeah, Luis, what can you tell us about those House Republicans' attempt to hold Attorney General Merrick Garland in contempt of Congress? And what else is Congress up to today?
Of course, yes, today the House of Representatives held a procedural vote, and House Republicans passed with 208 versus 207. This procedural vote was to move ahead with a House of Representatives resolutions that would hold Attorney General Merrick Garland in contempt because he has, and the Department of Justice has refused to divulge the audio recordings of the interview in between President Joe Biden and Special Counsel Robert Hur as part of the DOJ's special investigation into the President Biden's handling of classified materials. Now, right after votes from this procedural motion to move ahead with this resolution, I spoke with Congresswoman Ana Paulina Luna, the Republican from Florida, and she told me she has already filed the paperwork to hold Attorney General Merrick Garland in inherent contempt of Congress. Let's listen.
Yeah, I actually already filed an inherent contempt resolution, and so 10 days after we vote this off the floor for criminal contempt, in the event that the Department of Justice does not do their job, we will do it for them. Great. It's already been filed. It's a privilege motion, so it'll happen.
On the Senate side, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer announced this Wednesday that he will put to a vote on the Senate floor this Thursday a bill that will give federal protection to in vitro fertilization, IVF. Now, this bill is largely seen as a messaging bill, as it does not have the 60-vote threshold to pass in the Senate floor. Let's listen to what Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer had to say about this IVF bill.
Protecting IVF should be one of the easiest votes the Senate has taken all year. The vast majority of senators should agree that strengthening treatments that help people start a family is a good thing. Supporting this bill should be a no-brainer here in the Senate.
Now, Steph, on the lighter side of things, this Wednesday, Congress will have its annual Congressional baseball game. I spoke with Congressman Greg Casar, the Democrat freshman from Texas, who's going to be playing outfield today, and this is what he had to say about today's game. Let's listen.
Yeah, I'm excited to play in the game. It's an amazing game for charity, and so really hoping that the Dems finally take the title back from the Republicans. We've been practicing every morning. It's a great way to build camaraderie, and we're excited to raise some money for charity and have a lot of fun out there.
Now, Democrats have not won the annual Congressional baseball game since 2019. I also spoke with Republican Congressman Tim Burchett, and he actually touted his team's results and his participation in last year's game. Let's listen to Congressman Tim Burchett.
I'm the third string first baseman. My shoulders, they're sore from carrying this team all year.
Any expectations? Are the Republicans going to win again?
Well, if Tim Burchett gets in, it means we've run up the score once again, because that's what happened last year. And as you well know, I got a single and 2 RBIs.
Now, Steph, this year, the Congressional baseball game that will be held at the Nationals Park Stadium right here in Navy Yard has already sold more than 2,500 tickets. That's a record, breaking its 2023 record. And this is a baseball game that has been held annually since 1909. This year, they've actually made $2 million in donations to charity. So it'll be interesting to see whether Republicans continue their winning streak or Democrats claim the victory this year. Steph, back to you.
A lot of fun all around. Thank you so much, Luis Martinez. Great report. Next up, an Army vet and a former NASCAR driver were just some of the candidates running for elected offices across 4 states during Tuesday's primaries. NTD's Daniel Monahan has the highlights.
South Carolina, Nevada, North Dakota, and Maine all held primaries on Tuesday, while Ohio held a special election for a vacated congressional seat. In South Carolina, Representative Nancy Mace won the Republican nomination. Mace defeated challengers Catherine Templeton and Bill Young. Mace was endorsed by former President Donald Trump. The Congresswoman is a regular on interview shows, where she has called for her party to moderate on abortion and marijuana. She received criticism for joining 7 conservative members to oust former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. In Nevada, Republican Sam Brown overcame a crowded field of primary opponents to win Nevada's GOP U.S. Senate primary. That sets up a fierce general election battle against incumbent Democratic Senator Jackie Rosen that could decide which party controls the U.S. Senate. Brown, who was nearly killed by a roadside bomb in Afghanistan that scarred his face, made military service central to his message this campaign cycle. Brown was endorsed by former President Trump on Sunday, further boosting the Republican who far outpaced his opponents in fundraising. In North Dakota, Representative Kelly Armstrong won Tuesday's Republican primary for governor of the state. Armstrong currently occupies North Dakota's lone House seat. The Trump-endorsed candidate beat Lieutenant Governor Tammy Miller in the race to succeed Republican Governor Doug Burgum. Burgum did not seek a 3rd term and is under consideration to be former President Donald Trump's vice presidential running mate. Over to Maine, where former NASCAR driver and current state lawmaker Austin Theriault defeated fellow Maine House member Mike Sobolewski. Theriault will face 3-term incumbent Democratic Congressman Jared Golden in Maine's 2nd congressional district. The district is the site of a shooting that killed 18 in Lewiston in October. And finally over to Ohio, where Republican State Senator Michael Rulli won a special election Tuesday for a U.S. House seat that has sat vacant for months. The victory expands the GOP's narrow majority in the congressional chamber. Rulli defeated Democrat Michael Kripchak to fill the remainder of Republican Bill Johnson's unexpired term. Kripchak served in the Air Force and has done stints as an actor. He currently works at a local restaurant. The two face off again November 5th for a full 2-year congressional term that begins in January. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
And for more on these primary results, we're joined by NTD News contributor Mike Leon. He's the Policy and Strategy Director of the Free and Equal Elections Foundation and the host of the news commentary podcast, Can We Please Talk? Mike, good to see you. In South Carolina, Representatives Nancy Mace and William Timmons, both endorsed by former President Trump, won their primaries, as we just heard. How do you think these victories reflect Trump's influence on the Republican Party, and what might it mean for the general election?
Hey, Steph, good to see you as always. Yeah, so both of them won, and the margin of victory, too, for Nancy Mace was pretty wide, 57 to 30%. So I look at these numbers, and by the way, shout out to everybody who's continuing to vote in the primary process. I think people forget that there are races like this happening, primaries and runoffs, with respect to, either on the Republican or Democratic side, and facing the incumbents come November. But I think for Nancy Mace, she's been the ire of Trump, and now she recently got a Trump endorsement. So they've had a rocky relationship. But there were some other challengers in the state that had gotten some funding outside from Kevin McCarthy's group. And for Nancy Mace to win by this large a margin, remember, she endorsed Trump when he was in the primary process and not Nikki Haley. Representative Ralph Norman was the only one to actually endorse her from the state. So I think it says a lot about Trump's hold in South Carolina. But again, South Carolina is a state that is Republican through and through. And so I'd be shocked if she were to lose in November. But she got past this challenge so far in this primary.
Okay, let's turn to Nevada. Sam Brown won the Republican Senate primary there, and he'll face incumbent Senator Jackie Rosen in November. Given Nevada's status as a swing state, how significant is Brown's victory for the GOP, and what challenges does he face against Rosen?
Yeah, Brown's got a unique story because Nevada, nobody has won on the Republican side from the Senate since 2012. No presidential candidate has won since 2004 in Nevada. It's only 6 electoral votes. But in terms of the Senate race, I know he was going up against somebody who I happen to know personally, and Dr. Jeff Gunter, who was a former ambassador to Iceland. He's been on a couple of NTD shows before. And I think Sam's got an interesting case because, he's a former Army veteran. Obviously, he suffered some wounds in battle, and I think he can carry that message. And Jackie Rosen, on the Democratic side, from recent polling, is only up about 6 or 7 percentage points. And you mentioned it, Steph. Nevada's a battleground state. Nevada, Arizona, North Carolina, Virginia. These are some of the states, including Pennsylvania and Michigan and Ohio. Those are the states that are really going to boil down to not only the presidential race, but these key Senate and House races. Remember, every House seat is up for grabs, and there's a few Senate seats that are going to be up for grabs. And right now, Democrats control the chamber at a 51 to 49 clip. So I'd be interesting to see what happens. Again, numbers have shown that Nevada hasn't been won, like I mentioned before, on the Republican side, but it could flip this year.
Yeah, I'll be watching closely. Thank you so much, Mike Leon. Great to see you as always.
Thanks, Steph.
Next up, the nation's largest Protestant denomination narrowly voted down a proposal today that will not enshrine a rule banning churches with women pastors. Opponents argue the Southern Baptist Convention already has a way to oust churches without the need for a doctrinal ban. During the second day of their 2-day gathering in Indianapolis, 61% of the delegates voted in favor of the ban. However, it didn't receive a required 2/3 supermajority vote to become official. The Southern Baptists believe only men should be pastors. Just before today's vote, one delegate noted that the convention earlier voted to cut ties with a historic member church in Virginia. Last year, the group ousted the California megachurch Saddleback. Both churches had women pastors. And when we come back, higher tariffs imposed on Chinese electric vehicles. The European Union announced the hike today, a decision that follows Washington's tariff hikes on Chinese EVs. And 4 American college instructors are recovering in China following a knife attack. That story and more after the break.
Do you know that Cars for Compassion is the best way to donate your car? Through this non-profit program, you can not only help us keep bringing the world independent and daringly truthful journalism, but also significantly impact the life of somebody who needs a vehicle. The Epoch Times fights misinformation and big tech censorship by being independent and unbound to advertisers. Every single contribution to Cars for Compassion is a powerful endorsement of our unwavering mission. All you have to do is go to carsforcompassion.org and let us know about your car, and we'll schedule a pickup time and email you a tax-deductible receipt. To do this, just click the link below. Support truth, compassion, and hope. Donate your car right now at www.carsforcompassion.org.
Tired of scrolling Netflix? Trying to find something that's worth watching? Want to skip the censorship in mainstream media? Well, now you can with Epoch TV. New exclusive content every day with over 100 never-before-seen movies, films, and documentaries. Available and streaming now at your fingertips. For a limited time now, you can get 60% off Epoch TV by subscribing or upgrading to a yearly plan. Plus, get an additional $10 credit to rent featured movies on Epoch Cinema today. Skip mainstream narratives and find quality family entertainment from the comfort of your very own home. Say no to big tech and subscribe to Epoch TV.
A painting that has true beauty. I imagine it's like a door. The artist holds the key to open the door and bring people to a purer world. A world where people are more compassionate.
Life doesn't always give you time to change the outcome. Prediabetes does. With early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the 1-minute prediabetes risk test today. Go to doihaveprediabetes.org.
Welcome back. The 4 American college professors who were injured in a knife attack during a visit to a park in China are recovering today. The group is there on a teaching partnership with a local university. In this video that has gone viral, you can see the victims lying on the ground bloodied. The Chinese Communist regime quickly censored the video and any mention of the incident. The group was sightseeing in the Chinese city of Jilin on Monday when the attack occurred. 3 other foreigners and a Chinese person who attempted to intervene were also stabbed by the suspect, police said. Police arrested the 55-year-old alleged attacker. All of the victims were taken to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. And the European Union said today that it would impose tariffs of up to 38% on Chinese electric vehicles coming into the bloc. The decision follows Washington's tariff hikes on Chinese EVs set at 100%.
The Commission has also pre-disclosed today the level of provisional countervailing duties it would impose on imports of battery electric vehicles from China.
The Vice President of the EU Commission said China's unfair trade practices have injured European automakers. The bloc is now trying to discuss solutions with Chinese authorities. Last year, the EU bloc imported over $11 billion worth of Chinese electric cars. EU automakers can't compete with China's significantly lower prices. EU leaders raised concerns about Beijing's unfair subsidies last week. The Chinese Commerce Minister dismissed their accusations. Last October, the EU Commission launched an anti-subsidy investigation into China's EV supply chain. And the latest consumer report shows inflation holding steady, and a new survey says drivers want people to slow down. Here's NTD's Don Ma with today's Business Matters.
Okay, thank you, Steph. So inflation cooled more than expected in May. New data showing today that this is a welcome piece of news potentially. And this is coming just hours before the Federal Reserve is set to make its latest announcement on interest rates. Consumer prices rose 3.3% from a year earlier, slowing down from April. Now, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, on a monthly basis, prices were flat. Inflation was 0%, in fact. It's the first time since July 2022 that consumer prices did not rise on a monthly basis. So helping to slow inflation in May were falling gas prices, which dropped 3.6% from April. Though they're still up for the year, grocery prices were flat and overall food prices went up by 0.1%. It was lifted by a slight acceleration in inflation at the restaurant level. However, shelter inflation more than offset the decline in gasoline prices, rising 0.4% for the fourth month in a row. And this is underscoring the pressure Americans are feeling from housing-related expenses. A new survey found that most drivers in the U.S. support anti-speeding technology in vehicles. According to the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, more than 60% of drivers would be okay with an audible and visual warning when they go over the speed limit that is posted on the road. The report says that overspeeding is the factor in more than a quarter of traffic deaths, and speeding was responsible for 12,000 deaths in 2022. And a similar speeding device was approved by the European Union. All new vehicles will be equipped with a system that uses video and GPS to advise drivers on speed in Europe. And that is all from me. Steph, back to you.
And lastly, some frightening moments aboard a public bus when a deer who wasn't caught in the headlights crashed through the window shield. Take a look. The bus was traveling along this busy street in Warwick, Rhode Island on Monday when the deer seemingly appeared out of nowhere. That's when it leaped into the front windshield of the bus and landed inside, bringing the shattered glass with it. You can see the deer fly directly into at least one stunned passenger while others scramble to get out of the way. Officials said 6 passengers were on the bus at the time. 3 were reportedly injured. The deer appears to have survived the crash, but officials have not provided an update on its condition. Thank you for watching NTD Newsroom. I'm Stephanie Cox. See you tomorrow.